So hello everyone and welcome to the global panel discussion on the topic of the experience of work in Europe. I'm Lucia from Talentarium and I'll lead you through the discussion in the following hour. So first I would like to give you some basic information about this panel discussion. So this is going to be, or it will have a format of the moderated panel discussion, meaning that the idea of the panel is exploring similarities but also differences in HR practices and approach to work in Europe and in other continents. Also, during the discussion, I would definitely like to tackle the topic of the employee experience in Europe, of course, in comparison to the other markets in the world. So once again, I would like to thank Mr. Enrique Rubio, the founder of this event, who actually invited speakers with very different backgrounds, experiences, expertises, and opinions, which will share their perspectives on the topic. But first of all, to familiarize with them, I think it would be best if we start with a short introduction of each and every super interesting panelist we have here today. And my idea was to start alphabetically, probably with Chiara, but I'm not sure if she's here today. Not yet, okay. But until we're waiting for Chiara, maybe Joan can take over the leadership and provide us with some basic information about his experience, and then we can proceed to the others. So Joan, the stage is yours.
Okay, so thank you, Lucia, and thank you very much too, first of all, to Enrique for making this possible and inviting me. Well, my name is Joan Clotet. I used to introduce myself as a digital humanist, so someone who is devoted to people in this digital era. My background comes from IT, so I was a former IT consultant for many years, and after that I was IT manager also, but always very close to personal and collective growth, so very connected with digital transformation, learning, innovation. So really delighted to be here and to share some of my experience, and especially to learn from my peers too. So that's it.
Cool. Thank you very much. I think Katja might be the next one.
Yes, thank you, Lucia, and thank you, Enrique, of course, for organizing this really amazing event, and thanks to everybody for listening now. So I'm Katja. I'm People and Organization Development Manager in Njuškalo and Trikoder. Just for everybody who don't know what is Njuškalo, Njuškalo is the largest and biggest marketplace in Croatia, and Trikoder is an IT company which develops Njuškalo platform for us. So my background by education is economy background, and I'm working in HR for last 9 years, and I came to work in HR from logistics, which is totally uncomparable expertise, but it was my wish to work with the people because I like to declare myself like a people lover. I really like to take care how people feel and what kind of experience they have on the job. So yes, that's pretty much, yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much for sharing that. And Montse, currently not the last but not the least.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me, and especially thank you, Enrique, for being so brave to really do some hacking to HR, because when I heard about you, I realized I've been doing that for the last more than 10 years, really, and doing it by oneself is very hard. So now being all together is much better. So thank you to everybody who is listening to us. Please forgive me because now I live in Mexico and it's 5 a.m. So I had some coffee, but I'm fully awake. And just to tell you a summary of myself, I've been working in HR for more than 25 years, starting in Inditex, being the third person in the HR department of Massimo Dutti when it was just both. So I always being really an intrapreneur, but also I became an entrepreneur 10 years ago. So I know HR from both sides, from the inside and from the outside, but I always been trying to turn workplaces into a machine for growth, an engine for growth for the people that is inside to grow and for the company to grow, because it's no other way. So I work for more than 500 organizations and impact more than 1.5 million employees. I created Great Place to Work in Spain, implemented there when it was, and then did my own company. And now I'm in Tech de Monterrey, Mexico. Yeah, because I felt it was a great opportunity to work in education, to really impact talent from earlier than come to the workplaces, and I love it. And also, we are not called HR, we are called Talent, Culture, and Experience, which tells you about how much we are trying to change and transform HR. So I love to be here and looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
thank you, Montse, for the introduction part. And as we're still missing the fourth panelist, I think it will be the most appropriate way to continue our conversation. And if the fourth panelist joins, then she'll also have her minute or two to introduce herself. But okay, maybe to start with a conversation, or even prior to tackling deeper our topic, I actually wanted to tackle, I'd say, the most important thing regarding the experience of work, and it is, of course, related to the employee experience. The conversation we had during this preparation period is, of course, around the employee experience, and the first question we have there is actually how to define the employee experience and what does it mean to you. So I would definitely like to start with asking that question for each panelist to tell me a little bit more about it. How do you perceive employee experience in your workplace and in your surroundings, and what does it actually mean to you? So I don't know who wants to start.
If you wanna, if you wanna, I can start. Well, I think employee experience is a very complex topic because it's very holistic. So it's even HR is the one that is how could I say, managing it a bit more, because we are more in contact with people, with our employees and collaborators. It involves everybody that is interacting with the employee, especially leaders. So I think employee experience is very easy to confuse, get mixed up with something that is just what we do in HR for them, the processes, the practices from the onboarding. But we have to go farther and do a deep dive to really see what is behind each of those steps and how everybody involved in the company is impacting the employee experience, and also always mirror the client experience we want our clients to feel with the employee experience, so employees can deliver the promise we make to our customers. So especially, in my opinion, experience beyond perks is about culture. What is the culture experience? And what it needs to achieve is what I call the 3 Bs, that people believe in the culture, in the experience we are creating. People want to belong to it. They want to be part of it, to pass it, transmit it, touch the lives and hearts and brains of our clients, and finally behave according to the culture and the values and the ethics. So I think that is, for me, the complexity of the experience.
The complexity. Okay, yeah, thanks for sharing that. And if I understood correctly, it's like two-way communication between the employee and the company, and not just about the offerings from the company.
Exactly.
Cool. And what about the others? Do you share Montse's idea of the employee experience, or you have some additional thoughts on that topic?
Maybe I can continue. Yes, I share the opinion with Montse. I see employee experience more like relationship between employees and the company. Yeah. But when I say company, I agree with Montse. It's not just the HR and it's not just the management and the leadership. It's really, I think that the responsibility of employee experience is on all employees, because behavior of employees, the willingness to help each other, transmitting the knowledge and the friendship inside the working place can really affect a lot on employee experience, because it affects actually how people will feel on the job in every touch point from the very beginning to the end. That's how I see this employee experience.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And maybe, Joan, you can continue, and then I see that we have Chiara here, so hi. Okay. And thanks for joining, and we'll get back to you in a second.
Okay.
Yeah, so Joan, please continue.
Yeah, just to add something, I agree with my peers, and maybe the HR function is beginning this journey a little later than other functions. No? If we instead of employee or person or employee put a customer, many companies, especially those businesses, business to consumer, has a clear idea they want to get. They are competing for good customers to keep them being the customers of the company. So experience is also very interesting. It's to manage because it's we have different generations, different expectations, and as Montse said, or Katja, that this goes beyond the job. Obviously, there are differences depending on the country, the situation, the industry, many differences and diversity. But we are not just talking about getting the best talent to get on the job and go to the next one. So I think it's something that any HR professional should be really focused on, to have a global vision and also tools. But to put the candidate, not the candidate, to put the person from the whole cycle, from the into the company, to better understand them and try to help them grow in the company.
Thank you for sharing that. I got the impression that all of your thoughts are in a way in line or combined with a vision that employee experience is much more than just, let's say, perks and benefits that a company offers to a particular employee, and on the other hand, some kind of marketing trend on the labor market. And again, I would like to say hi to Chiara. Hi, it's nice to have you here. We actually started with a conversation, so I think it would be good if you just introduce yourself in a few sentences. And we started, talking about the employee experience and your perception of the employee experience in general. So if possible, please combine those two things. And
of course, I'll try to do that in a hurry. First of all, apologies. I was a few minutes late. I was struggling with the network because in Italy, everybody's working from home. So the networks are a bit overwhelmed. So let's hope for the best. And here we are all. Second, I think the best way to define what I do is I'm an HR technologist. I've been working with the technologies related to HR for longer than you may be alive. And I find it fascinating because it has changed incredibly in the last few years. So today I work I've been leading HR technology for very large corporations such as Nestle, Philip Morris. Today I work with SAP to advise our customers and figure out what is the best way to approach HR technology to serve their needs. Employee experience is sort of a newcomer and is not. I have approached it from the point of view of technology, because technology today can serve us to collect that information and make sense of it. It's a lot more than simply what a company offers from the point of view of technology, because it's the way we experience our life and even more so our work. And we spend 8 hours per day at least working. It better be a good 8 hours per day, right? So I think it's very variable by country, by region, by location. And that is definitely a richness we can add as HR people and as HR technologists to what we have as tools to understand what our employees need.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. And on top of that, what you just mentioned, and on top of the experience that you have, which is, if I understood correctly, not just related to the European market, but also to the global one. What do you see, or what are your thoughts on that employee experience topic around the globe? Like, do you perceive some kind of differences and similarities in terms of employee experience, for example, in Europe in comparison to or the US or the rest of the Europe? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that is, well, what is really more personal than experience? We all live it through our own glasses. And we all live immersed in a different culture and a different perception of things. So it can be interpreted in many different ways. Now, we can read it and account for it in similar ways, in the sense that if we actually collect experience, we will use similar technology to collect it together and to make numbers out of that. Some of the ways I've seen it being used today is, well, when you have HR technology, you have data and you collect data, but operational data give you facts, but not the answers about why those facts happen. And this is something you can get through employee experience, whether it is survey, pulses, and other ways. This information is collected in similar ways, but the way it is lived is very different. Because on one side, there is a personal factor, but then there are local factors that are things like such as economy, an economical situation, a legal situation. Think of the U.S. The U.S. have a very specific, very low unemployment right now. A war for talent or a search for talent. It doesn't mean that there are not enough people, but it simply means that some specific talents are more difficult to find than others. At will employment. These are radically different not point of view, but facts than in many countries in Europe. I was listening earlier to the Asian employee experience, and one of the facts that were coming up is how different is Asia. We think Asia, boom, one. No, it's very differentiated because different areas have a radically different reaction and way of appropriating experience. Think of China, think of Korea, think of Japan. Right now, even just with the coronavirus, we're seeing such huge differences in the way things are understood and lived. And Europe is a bit of a similar situation because think of Nordics and Northern Europe and UK with and understand language, culture, that live in a specific environment. Think of Southern Europe, Croatia and Italy are relatively close. We still have very many differences, but we may have from the point of view of work and employment some similarities.
Okay, and when watching or comparing the employee experience from that broad perspective, like comparing, for example, the US and the European market in general, do you feel that there are more similarities or differences? I know or understand that you've mentioned that the European market can also be divided into smaller chunks or smaller pieces, and that it really differs based on a particular country. But in general, would you assume that that employee experience can actually be very, very similar between those two continents, or the differences are significantly higher?
That's a good question. I think the reading of it may be done differently because the interest that I encounter when discussing it with HR people is very different. In the US, there is a different advance. No, it's not. It's a different advancement. It doesn't mean that they are further up, but it's just different. And they are at the point to discuss the UI in depth and how the employees are using it. Because they actually are trying to retain employees much more than we're doing it in Europe. In Europe, because we don't, in most of our countries, not all, but most, do not have an at-will employment. So employees have culturally, not the habit, but the willingness to stay. They know they're safe. There is a different relationship to the employer. So our first concern is not to find ways to keep them, because most of the time they stay happily. You know, it's a long-term, it's a more medium-term relationship, not long-term as in the years gone. In the US, it's very different. So the focus on a great experience or cookies at work and great coffee and free food and resting areas. At Google, they have washing machines, so people don't ever have to leave Google. Here, well, it's much less relevant. So that's the way we read it as an employer, less than the way people live through it. But then how they live through it, of course, is a factor of how and what employer offer.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It definitely is interesting to evaluate what are the similarities and differences here. And what about your thoughts and your experiences, Montse? If I'm correct, you're currently out of the Europe, but have worked on the European market for quite a long period of time.
Yes.
So do you have something to add, or some kind of different opinions on the employee experience between like the European market and the non-European market?
Well, I think the European market, I agree with what Chiara was saying, in the sense I think the European market is, maybe we have an approach more of, let me say, a little bit more paternalistic, if you want. Like, and people still think that you need to have, especially I work more mainly in Spain, a long time being for a long time in a company means it's a good thing, but it doesn't mean we are taking care of the employee experience well. Neither the Americans, frankly, because doing washing machines and all that can also be, you don't want people to leave. No? So is, but I think if I go into the consequences of work, and that 1 out of 4 people will suffer mental health issues, stress at work, it means we are doing something wrong all over the place. Because when I work in Great Place to Work and with the US and now here, we're very close. The employee experience is just scratching the surface. It's very superficial. It's about cookies. It's about perks at work, but it's not going really deep. You know, even to work really engages people. So I believe there are different, but deeply they are not so many. Because when you look at Gallup's results of 1 out of 3 engaged, is all over the world. Even it coincides with one in the UK done by YouGov, just in the UK and Europe, which was also 1 out of 3. So really the effects of what we're doing, as Chiara was saying, we may be doing different things, but we are reaching to the same place. We are not engaging people, and we are not managing the experience in a way that is taking from people their best version. And especially in Europe, that is a fact. We need it more because the economy is more stagnated and the growth is limited and in fact it's shrinking. So we are going to need really to turn people on, get out of the comfort zone and be the best version at work. So that.
Okay, and on top of that, do you have some kind of secret recipe or idea how to actually approach to that problem of engagement on the European market?
Well, I think HR has to be braver, and has to convince the boards that all these perks has to move away from perks and benefits, which we know from hardware that in the best case they just stop being demotivated and really create cultures that engage people and that they manage the diversity within the diversity that Chiara was also mentioning, in order to make the experience engaging for different needs. So definitely, and engaging leaders in that, because people join companies and cultures, but they leave bosses, and that's a fact. So we really need to bring them on board with the experience and make them accountable for that experience.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And on top of that, or to maybe dig deeper into that topic and to go more precisely regarding a particular country, I actually wanted to give a word to Joan and to actually ask about concrete experiences in Spain. Like, what are your thoughts or your experiences so far? Like, what motivates people to work in Spain, or how does it look like in terms of culture? Does it differ from the rest of the Europe, or you see some kind of similar practices that are visible across the entire European market?
Well, I think there are similarities, of course, and that's one of the keys of the things that we can really work together, no, in a diverse team, no. I work in Spain. I work for a company that was born in Spain in the 50s, which is in the infrastructure management. We are in more than 20 countries, some of them in Europe, in UK, in Poland. So we see differences in the different countries. From my perspective, because I was born here in Spain and I work mainly here in Spain, there are some contexts that is really affecting the way that we deal with work. Apart from different generations and apart from stereotypes, there are some facts. No? So in the case of Spain, for example, we have 14% unemployment. I remember a conversation with some of my peers in Switzerland a couple of years ago, and he was very worried because they had 3% of turnover. At that time, we had 25%. So it's a matter of the reference point. But in any case, there is a high rate. No? Also, there's a high a high percentage of temporary contracts. The minimum wage, for example, is lower than other countries. Our actual law here in Spain makes layoffs very expensive, so it's also protective with fixed contracts, which is good. But in the other hand, it's also limiting the option for younger people to exceed responsibilities. We also had a quite obvious one. We are improving, but we also have language barriers. So Europe, it's a sum of many different things. 50 countries, 19 of them with less barriers, the European Union. But in any case, every country has its own singularities, no? And apart from the country Sometimes maybe it's a situation we try to, or we tend to understand that from a country or geographic point of view, and it's more affected than for culture or for the industry that you work for, or the age that you have, or your past experience. So of course, especially if you work in a global company that like I do, you have to be well, sensitive to different realities, because if you want to move talent from one country to another, there are different realities, and people, not just among countries, among Spain and Germany and UK, despite of the Brexit, it's people moving into Spain, going from one region to another, because we have 4 languages in this little country, for those one listening to us from the other side of the world. No? So Europe is diverse. Spain, of course, is also diverse. And my point would be, there are some contexts, economic, law, behavior, needs from different generations that are really changing, that makes a difference, no? And in any case, just to finish, is that talented people want to learn and moves where work is. So when people wants to grow, and people understand that things are changing very fast, and you must be connected in an environment that lets you grow, learn, and younger people maybe are more open to change than not so young people like me. I think that that's an opportunity for HR to better understand everyone, and to help them to better understand themselves and change. But context is always key. It's not barrier. It must be understood to deal with that. But it's different in every country, and this is the case of Spain. But every country from these 50 countries, it's a different reality, no?
Yeah, I'm actually very glad that you pointed it out, because although European market for, let's say, a foreigner might look like a, I don't know, small one geographically, and on the other hand, in terms of all of the countries situated on the European market, however, there are a lot of differences and a lot of, let's say, special things relevant for each and every market or each and every country that has to be taken into consideration when thinking about people and some kind of business expanding. And I think it will be good to hear Katja's thoughts on that, because if I understood that correctly, Katja actually has quite a lot and relevant experience both in Central but also Eastern Europe. And maybe you can also give us an overview of your thoughts on those specific things about each and every market you've worked on.
Yes, thank you, Lucia, for the question. Definitely, yes, I have experience, let's say, in Adria, Balkan region, let's call it like this, in several countries, and even it is a really small territory if you compare with the rest of the Europe. I really noticed the differences between the people and between the employees in different countries, and even, I don't know, out of 5 countries, 4 of us speak really similar language even, but the differences are sometimes really big. Of course, it's not depending only on the country. Differences among people depends also on industry in which you are working. So, for example, if you work in FMCG industry, if we talk about employee engagement and employee experience, people like to be connected with the brand, which is really specific when you work in FMCG. So the brand, the strongest brand is, they are maybe more engaged, and they are maybe more interested for you as an employer. And for example, in IT industry, I think that, Lucia, you can confirm also my opinion that people are really connected with the project on which they are working. And this is something that can engage them if they are working for interesting project, which is deal with the highest technology and from which they can learn. But if we come back to the differences between countries, for example, I noticed that in one country, if we talk, for example, about candidates that we would like to attract to the company, in some countries, candidates are really interested to hear on the very beginning if they will have possibility for international career. So you have to be very transparent from the beginning of the process, that maybe yes and maybe no. What is the possibility to start to work in some other country if they know that you are a global company? For example, comparing another country, the candidates are more interested to hear what kind of investment a company will take to educate them, what kind of training, how they plan to develop them if they step in the company. So interests are really different from country to country. If we are talking about the candidates that would like to come in your company. And also, I have noticed one country that have a big portion of young people who are studying abroad. And here, if you would like to attract the people in the company, you have to be very fast. And HR must be really in line with the hiring managers, because sometimes if you are not reacting in 2 days, they already have some additional offer. They are willing to go to take their bags and go to live in some other country. So yes, we can say that we have on a small territory big differences between the people and between their expectation, what they're expecting from employer as well.
Yeah, thanks for pointing it out, because yeah, I also believe that that's actually an interesting and on the other hand very challenging fact to deal with, especially if we also mentioned that the European market is very divided, or there are a lot of smaller countries. But on top of that, like, how you also have that experience even now, if I'm correct, working for a local, in a way, local company, or a company that operates in few countries in Europe but competing on a global market. So can you give us some, or can you give to the audience some kind of advice, like how to cope with that challenge, or how to attract and retain talents on the European market or in a particular country within the European Union when you have to deal or fight with the, I'd say, the rest of the world?
It's very difficult, you know, it's really very difficult, especially in, for example, now in Croatia. And I think that we all of us facing the lack of really qualified people for, I would dare to say, for any position that you would like to have in the company. So Europe is open market for everybody. So whoever cannot find something in Croatia, for example, it's really easy to go abroad and start career abroad. So definitely companies are really struggling to keep talents here in Croatia, because it's not only a question about start to living abroad. You have, for example, in IT industry, so many opportunities for developers working remotely, for example, for the company from US. So how can you compete with a salary, for example, that is really high salary in Croatia, but let's say they can get much better conditions from some company in US. So it is really difficult. So definitely I have to say, yes, we are trying to fight on the market also by creating a different benefits and perks for the employees, because it is important, because it's not the only one thing that you have to take care when we talk about employee experience, but sometimes it can make a difference. If somebody have to choose between working remotely for US company for a higher salary, but then if they have, for example, in the company, I don't know, 60 people from which he or she can learn, then it can make a difference. It can really make a difference.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answer a question, but yes, maybe you can ask me something additionally.
Yeah, I would actually like to ask. Sorry, I maybe didn't hear the last sentence that you said. So if it's possible to repeat it again.
No, I just said if you want, you can ask me additional questions if I was not on the track of the question and the answer, of course.
No worries. You actually pointed out the most important things, or the most, I'd say, relevant things about the struggles and challenges that probably employers on the Southern Eastern European market are facing, or that, yeah, might be additional concern to them. And I actually wanted to point out the same thing to Joan. Like, what are your experiences? Do you share the same experiences and thoughts that Katja has? Or on the other hand, people, for example, in Spain are fighting with something completely different?
No, I think it's, I agree also with what Katja said, and despite the differences, when we think about top talent, that's a very obvious thing. That who is the top talent, no? So when we are thinking about candidates, or candidates or people in the company. So imagine in a football match, somebody scores, but many other people is working for that to win the game. And it's not so easy to really measure everything. So for me, one of the key things that is also arriving to the HR function, it's to be able to also to identify, to make the right questions, to identify who are the top talents into the company, to really listen to them, also listen to data. I include listening to data and to really understand what's going on, because there are, especially in big companies, but in anyone, we have people everywhere, and it's quite difficult really to understand what's going on at every place, because from HR we are pushing for some processes, some capabilities, but at the end everybody's managing people, no? And one of the key things, and probably connecting again with what I said before regarding customers, no? How can we keep the top customers? So to be flexible, to really understand them, to customize as much as possible. It's difficult, and the more people you have in your company, you must standardize, and you must make a segmentation to be really effective. But at the end, at the other side, you have a person that wants to be listened, to be understood. So customization and flexibility as much as you can in your company with your resources, it's key. Sometimes it's teleworking, sometimes it's just to be listened, sometimes it's quality feedback or visibility. But at the end, for these people, for anyone, I would say, but if we focus on top talents and want to keep them, to take care of them with our resources and to make them feel really relevant or happier. So it's a challenge for us in any company. And my point here will be that also data here has a right to help us to better understand, to make the right questions, and to digitally reach everyone. Because it's a function managing people. As I said, we all manage people, and not all the people is really their experience come from managing people. It's getting results and manager, other kind of things, but not everyone must be really good managing people. So we also as HR can help them to really understand who are the best players in the team and how can deal with that, no?
Yeah, I would definitely agree to that, to identify or which fights HR actually wants to compete in or fight, or for which employees to fight for. Okay, and regarding those challenges or obstacles that even part of the Europe or the entire European market is facing regarding both talents and skills shortage, I don't know, what are your thoughts on some kind of learning opportunities? Can, for example, the European market learn something from the rest of the world? I think maybe Montse and Chiara can help us with that, as you both have not just international European experience, but global experience as well. Like, do you see some trends that are, for example, don't exist on the European market, which might be beneficial for it? Or on the other hand, maybe if it's the other way around, that the European market can learn something the other markets or other continents. I don't know which one of you wants to start.
Chiara.
So Chiara, it's up to you to communicate something here.
Well, I think that Europe need to start seeing experience as not a cookie matter. It's not really about giving people cookies. It's rather about, and whether you use high-level technology or just asking people. We have to remember, as we were saying a moment ago, Juan was saying, it's not, we're all in the business of managing people, whatever we're doing, even if we're not in HR. And we need to understand that asking people how they are and engaging them in the work they're doing is how we can raise their experience, and from the experience we can raise their engagement in the company. It's correct that the engagement has been at the ever low in the world, and that there are little differences here and there. Employees seems to be less and less interested in doing a work that is not relevant for them. But our job as employers in general is to understand how to provide them with a good experience of work. And a good experience is not about what kind of food I eat at lunch, because if I don't like it, I'll bring my own food. It's really about making sure that they get the learning, that we know what they want and what they're missing, and that we can provide it to them. And that includes making sure, understanding why the learnings we provide them are not relevant to them, why they're leaving. Sometimes, something I see all the time is internal succession get forgotten. People hire and recruit from the outside, but if people don't see that they actually have opportunity internally, well, they leave the country, leave the company, leave the group, the organization, because they actually want to see where their opportunities are. And this is something that Europe is not necessarily doing as well as others are today. The internal successions are often overlooked, and we are not really asking people how we can help them.
And what would you advise for to, let's say, to the European HR professionals? Like, what do they need to start doing differently, or I don't know, keep as practices? I got the impression that just by taking care of the employees, we could do something better, or increase that engagement, or it's something else here.
Well, taking care of the employees and asking them implies having a good, and I'll say a dirty word here, performance cycle. Doesn't mean that you actually have to see it as a performance cycles. It doesn't have to be called performance cycles, but making sure that managers actually talk to their employees. And it seems to be obvious, but it's surprisingly not necessarily done everywhere. If every manager could actually talk regularly to their employee, not asking, how are you feeling today, but asking, okay, how's work going? Is there something? Our job as managers is making sure that our employees can do what they're supposed to do in the best way. So it's our job to ask them and understand what they need, and facilitate as an HR person, making sure that there is a continuous conversation that is documented, yes, so we can help and support when needed, making sure that the trainings are available and relate to what the employees need to learn in his role. And he has an understanding of, if you want another role, what can he learn to make it easier, to make it achievable, to get there. These are all things we can start doing, and in some cases keep doing if we're doing them already.
Yeah, and even doing it more intensively than probably the current practices.
Yeah, I think, Lucia, I would like to add that I think what Chiara was saying is very interesting, because my advice will be that, because here, for instance, in Mexico, like the US, the workforces are far bigger. I mean, this university, we have 30,000 employees, take the Monterrey, and it's just to give you, there are many things that by scale you cannot really do. And I think something we are starting to change is we are not leading with the HR practices one size fits all. I think HR has lived the gold era where I do one size fits all. I did this policy for everyone, and that's over. That's completely over, because the diversity within the diversity. We have to move from one size fits all practices and coffee for all to really customize experiences for each employee differently, because we are moving also from the world of talent to the world of skills. And it means you're going to have people coming in and out of the organization, being external, internal, whatever you want to call it, the gig economy. And we have to be prepared to be able to really quickly and agile, in a very agile way, to provide the experience we want, to get the best from, as Chiara was saying, to get the work we need the people to be doing. So it involves lots of things, and we have to forget about HR practices and really start with the needs of the employees, and asking and being able to identify and especially measure, focus and measure. As Joan was saying, we are in the era where assuming we know what people want is the biggest mistake we can do, because we don't know. I'm Generation X, and I don't know, millennials, centennials is so complicated, but it also within those categories of people, everybody is different. So we need to be able to to really understand which buttons to click and move to a much more analytics based and predictive, because we need to know what is the impact, what we're doing, because we never were able to along these years. We always try to measure our impact and never managed to, but now it's time. We have the technology.
To start doing that. Okay, you actually mentioned something very, very interesting and in a way eye-catching for me, that we need to fine-tune experiences and on the other hand try to adapt to a particular employee or part of the market that we're targeting. But what advice would you give to the HR professionals in terms of those HR practices versus employee experience? Like, do HR practices need to be here to create a very specific or certain employee experience, or we should just adapt HR practices to create a particular experience that we're trying to create? Like, well, what are your thoughts on that?
The experience and the marketeers are ahead of us, and the experience start with the need. Because we cannot, if we start with the process, we're going to get it wrong. So we have to start with the experience and make sure we plug in the HR practices and simplify them. And also something that Chiara mentioned, how we communicate them. Who wants to be doing performance, managing performance? No, but you want to have a conversation about your growth. I mean, how HR communicates. I dedicate the last 10 years in my company Grow to do that. I mean, sometimes it's terrible. Nobody wants that. Who wants to buy performance, midterm reviews, climate surveys? What is in it for me? But if I say, listen, we are having a conversation with this survey to know what you need at work, to be able to improve. Okay. You know, so we have to change how we really speak, and we have to learn to be more marketeers and definitely start with the need and start with the experience and change wherever we're changing. I mean, here in tech, probably we are going to be managing, including with us in the experience, IT. The IT department is going to work with us. And maybe the transactional part, we're going to move to finance. You know, so all the transaction, we don't want it. We have to really automatize transaction and focus, as we start saying, Katja was saying about the relationship. If we want to manage relationships, we have to do that and manage relationships, not transaction. And everything we talk to employees sometimes is like, sign here, get your pay slip, respond this survey, talk to your boss. We order them around transactionally. I'm exaggerating, just to make the point. Sorry.
Yeah, but I believe that you actually made a point with that. And on top of that, I actually wanted
something.
Yeah, sure. Please do so. Yeah, Katja, it's your turn.
I don't hear you. No.
Can you hear me now properly?
I hear now, yeah.
Okay, cool. Then, if possible, you can continue.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. So I just want to add something to what Montse said. Yes, it is a question how we communicate something. For example, these performance reviews or mid-year review, or I think that she mentioned culture pulse or something. I think that it's not just a question how we will communicate it. It's a question what we'll do after. If nothing happens after each of these events, then definitely people lose faith and trust in not only in HR, but also in leadership. Yeah. So the action after that is crucial, I think.
That's a very good point.
And also, if I can add also something to Katja, it's if you want to help people to transform people, to help them evolve, to help to transform companies, the first to transform is ourselves. So in the same line that my peer said, so we have to be more digital. And I'm thinking about mindset, not just mechanizing processes that shouldn't be done. As Montse said, that maybe in their origin many years ago, from more an industrial approach made sense, but maybe nowadays some of them maybe lost his aim. I don't think that everything must be changed, no? But sometimes it's we must not be focused to do the same process and try to improve a little from last year. We must think if that should be done, but maybe we are committing resources and time and energy, and also our brand as HR. Probably we have to gain also, I come from IT, as I said to you in the beginning, and also the IT professional has some stereotypes, no? Also for HR. So people give us credibility depending on what they get from us, from our service catalog. And we have our service catalog must be wider, must be more marketing, more methodology and tools like design thinking to put the employee in the center, more people analytics, more data, more individual oriented versus process oriented. And at the end, every company has its own resources, and probably nobody can do all the things that they need because resources are always limited. But myself as an employee, if I look behind in different companies that I've worked for, I would like to have somebody, person specialist to help me learn, a kind of learning consultant, a career consultant, a kind of growth partner, apart from to be paid and a couple of things that should be done. But there are a couple of things that in a world that is changing, HR has a great opportunity and a great responsibility, I would say. I think we live really amazing times for HR professionals, and we have a lot more tools, methodologies to really reach more people, to really, as Montse said before, not just understand them. So sometimes we have to have the right questions, not the right answers, and to be proactive. And the digital era really gives us a lot of space to make questions to thousands of people and try to understand what's going on. And I think it's a challenge for all of us. But we should be delighted because the era that we are living.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. Yeah, thanks for actually pointing it out, because I also got the impression from all of you that need for change and need to adapt and need to evaluate what's happening in our surroundings and adapt our processes or practices according to it is something that is, let's say, a hot topic nowadays in Europe in HR. But what are your thoughts on the speed or the catching up of those things that are happening in the world? Like, is Europe fast enough in terms of adapting to changes, especially in terms of the HR and the employee experience, or we should be doing some things differently, or in another pace? Like, what are your thoughts on that? I don't know. I don't have a specific person to point this question to, so whoever feel comfortable communicating something, please do so.
Maybe I can start very shortly because I was the last one to speak. But also the digital adds speed. So and the humans are not so fast. So the idea is all the digital transformation pushes us and they intermediate us. No? So imagine just from the area of learning, of a company that sets up, or an academy or university, and Montse is in this area, just to trying to set up what knowledge is needed, how to set up, organize, deliver. In digital, you also have a way not just to deliver faster, it's also to understand what people is going on, what people likes, and react very fast. That do not mean that we have to go to MOOCs instead of face-to-face trainings in leadership, but we have a lot of let's say pressure, because all the consumer understanding as consumer, all our employees, they are digital consumers, and they want things easy, fast, valuable for them at the right time, and this is also pressing us. No? So I think that HR, and I'm not thinking about any company or country, it's behind that. It's still, for example, in my case, my role in Ferrovial, in my company, is talent innovation. I don't know many people. Montse is also focused on that, and I met her thanks to this event. But there are not many people, and it's not because of my job. It's the role of talent innovation is not very present as a role, and we also have to rethink the way that we deliver our services, because the digital era is really, really, really fast. Probably the key things can be, we can get more efficiency in our processes, but at the same time we have a lot of power to augment the services that we deliver to our people, and it begins being more aware about that we are lower than our customers expect, maybe.
Yeah, thanks for pointing it out. Does anyone else wants to add something, like Chiara or Montse, Katja? Does your experiences or thoughts differ here, or would you agree with what Joan said, that we should be in a way faster and revise our thinking and perception to the world outside, or the internal and external customers we have?
Yes, I think I agree completely, and I definitely think that we have to be much faster, and it means we have to be less afraid of fail fast if you have to fail, you know. And in fact, we have to forget the project planning and the long and go more agile. I mean, many companies are doing, you know, working with Scrum and Agile, borrow from software developers, but it's the only way. But that it means we have to be less afraid of making a mistake, or, you know, and just do better testing, A/B testing, try with this, the other, and measure what works better to prove and to make our point. So definitely we have to add speed, because the world is not waiting.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Okay, and as I see that our time is running out, I think we still have some time for some kind of closing words. So my idea was actually to sum it all up with, let's say, your short question, or just short comment on the, I'd say, quite wide question, like in summary or in general, what's your opinion on the experience of work in Europe, or what's it like to work in Europe? So I don't know who wants to start. Maybe Chiara, you can start, as yeah, you joined the last and now you'll have to finish the first.
It's always difficult to summarize things in one sentence, so I'll try. But we said many relevant things. I believe that considering that today is not about speed, we have to act, and it's more important to start than to try to act generically fast in every direction. And I believe we have to understand that digitalization is not about automatizing things, is not about being automatic, is not about automation of processes, is about understanding what processes should be and how we can introduce the right one in our companies.
Okay, yeah, thanks for sharing that. It definitely is something to carry or to think about even after this this panel discussion. Okay, what about your thoughts, Katja? Maybe you can also summarize it in a few sentences.
Yes, of course I can. Just to summarize about employee experience, for me it's, let's say, understanding and care about people, accepting diversities, accepting different opinions, and accepting also the young generations. And I think that today work in Europe is a really great opportunity, because on a small place you can meet lots of different situations and lots of different people. And we as HR just have to be agile enough, as Montse said, and constantly be in a loop of trying to let's say, create something else that will increase employee experience in the companies.
Okay, thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I think Montse could be the next one, as yeah, we'll give ladies the opportunity to speak first.
Okay, well, it's hard, as Chiara said, to summarize it, but I will say that we should don't panic. I mean, we have done great things in HR, but it's time now to really look with a critic eye and don't feel attached to what we have achieved, and let go of what is not adding value. And hence, we should start with the client experience always, and then make sure we are able to mirror the employee experience according to that. So each moment of truth with our clients should be mirrored with an employee moment of truth. And always don't want HR to be protagonist of all this, and make each employee and each leader, please, leaders are super important, and we are not doing a great job with them, and they still, you know, they can sabotage any great experience. If, you know, we say we have flexibility, but then the boss looks at the watch every time you leave. Yeah, that's a big problem. So is you don't have to do big things, just small things, and making sure the leaders are on board.
Yeah, thank you for pointing it out. And we still have time for a few minutes or sentence or two from Joan. So the stage is yours, Joan.
Okay, so I would say just two connected things. The first one is related to employee experience. It's important, and maybe it's more important than we think. So among other things that we've been reviewing, this is one of the key things because it's having the view, the mindset, and our methods and processes and everything around our target, our customers, our internal customers, which is our people. No? And the other one is just to congratulate the people that is connected right now, because probably many people, it's just heads up, taking some time from the day to day just to connect to these kind of events and to see what's going on in the world. And I think it's something that it's so many people connected, the initiative from Enrique and the team, and so many people connected. It's really great because the HR people, despite our experience, our industry, our country is here just to listen what can be done better. And I think it's very positive for us as a function.
Cool. Thank you very much. And thank you all for sharing your thoughts and actively participating in this panel discussion. I have to admit, I really enjoyed discussing with you the experience of work in Europe. And I hope that everyone who listened to us virtually got something, I'd say, new out of this discussion. So I hope you'll all continue following the Hacking HR community. And we're all looking forward to connecting with anyone interested in creating the best HR that has ever existed. So stay tuned for more discussions, and cheers from all of us at this panel.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good luck.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Awesome, everybody.